I am Mike Rose with the City of Tacoma. Currently working in the asset management group. We've recently reorganized the city with a goal of really trying to capture asset management as from a holistic standpoint, so we're not just working individual groups. So when I put this presentation together, I was with the surface water group, but I'm still doing the same work, so everything still applies. So I kind of wanted to just talk about the permit a little bit. One quick slide. Most of you guys are very aware of the requirements, and they do vary among different municipalities, but just kind of touch on the points of the permit requirements that I'm trying to attack with this particular program. Essentially, this is where it started from. We were able to advance this program to take on more tasks and really solve some other issues that we came across as we were putting this thing together. So I'll go through that and a little quick history on what kind of initiated this program, and then I'll get into some goals and then kind of final off with some of our lessons learned. So to start off, we are a Phase I community. So some of the requirements that we're really looking at, essentially within the permit there for our Phase Is, we really have three options. We can either clean the entire system, we can inspect the entire system and clean what needs to be cleaned, or do kind of a circuit analysis. So the City of Tacoma chose the circuit analysis. It just really wasn't feasible for the other two options, just as far as the amount of effort required to do it with the size of our system and where we were set up. But I think that with the data that we're having now, we're going to be able to do a lot better in the future. So kind of getting into some statistics, so you guys got kind of a gauge of the City of Tacoma. I'm sure you've seen, I think there was 4 or 5 other presentations by Tacoma, so I won't get into too much detail on the size, but just to kind of get into what we are and where we are. If you don't know where Tacoma is, you can almost throw a rock and hit it. It's just kind of down the way here. We're within Pierce County, and initially, a couple years ago, we didn't really divide our storm system up into manageable parts, so we took an effort upon ourselves to really break the city up into what we call sub-basins. The map up here kind of outlines the different sub-basins, and really these come down to where our outfall locations are, and have to do with which water body they fall to. So we have 9 stormwater basins and 68 sub-basins. We have about 19,000 catch basins, and what we ended up doing was dividing up the basins kind of geographically by outfall and trying to divide them up, just pretty much with a pen, and just kind of marked them out and said this is a good geographical chunk, and end up working out where they all fell about 250 catch basins per sub-basin. We have a total of about 488 miles of pipe, just to give you kind of a gauge for comparison to other cities. So the history of and what really started this program comes back to some of what we were doing to meet the permit. Starting pretty much last year, we were still using these programs to kind of track track and meet the NPDES requirements for inspection. And essentially what we had a GPS sweeper program where our sweeper trucks had GPS units in all the trucks, and they would essentially just drive down the road, and there was supposedly identifying catch basins that were out of compliance by just looking outside of the window of the truck and then hitting a button when they found one. This program was very sketchy at best, and as I put in here, kind of inaccurate. We determined that our crews were finding in the numbers of, oh yeah, we found 5 catch basins this week that were out of compliance, and that's not really realistic. So we took it upon ourselves, just doing an internal audit, that wasn't going to work. We also had crews out cleaning. They were using paper forms that were horribly designed. No one really took really looked at the form and how the effective form is written. So these forms were just kind of slapped out there, with 2 blanks, fill in the blanks. And so they really had no relation to any useful data. So what really changed us, we decided last year that as January 1, 2014, we were going to set a goal that we were going to be active in a GIS-integrated system that could actually work and answer questions and be useful. And one of the other things that came up too is we had a source control issue where we found some PCBs and we wanted to know when was the last time this catch basin was cleaned. And it took office staff, 2 or 3 people, about 40 hours of time sifting through boxes of cleaning records to try to identify, when was this catch basin clean. And literally it was a office building the size of that corner over there, just filled with boxes from the floor to ceiling. And so I thank them for doing that, but at the same time, I really felt bad, and I felt that if we couldn't do something more intelligent in this day and age, then it was just a waste of time and a shame. So with that, we kind of set some goals. Our first goal was we wanted to be able to have our crews be able to assess catch basins very quickly. We wanted it to be very easy, get right to the point. We didn't want to mess around. Sometimes we find that, we're looking at forms. We said, it'd be really cool to collect this. It'd be really cool to collect that. And we find that, each click takes time. So if you add 55 drop downs, then you're going to have the guy sitting there for an hour filling out this form when he did 5 minutes worth of work. So we tried to get away from that. Knowing that catch basin assessments and cleaning can be done fairly quickly, we wanted the form to match that. So a higher percentage of our time was actually doing the work and less filling out the actual paperwork. So some of our data goals that we had, we wanted to have some KPIs set, some key performance indicators. We really wanted to set some goals and be able to see where we're at in the big scope of things. We wanted to meet our compliance goals and have a nice, easy way of displaying it. We wanted the data to be live. We wanted it to be sustainable so that as trends change, we can modify things. And we wanted to be able to identify trends. So with that, I'll get in kind of the next slide here, and then I'll talk more about the GIS here later on. So getting into the assessment goals, our first goal has to do with the circuit analysis requirement. So we determined that circuit analysis, the definition really gets down to essentially outfalls, is considered everything upstream of an outfall being a circuit. So we've already kind of divided our city up into larger geographical areas by outfall, and the subbasins, we parse through those areas a little bit with the subbasins, but we figure if we hit 25% of all subbasins, that we're going to hit essentially 25% of the system in that area. And so we did focus a little bit more in our outfalls in the Foss waterway. If you were to any of the other presentations, it's a super fun site area, so we really wanted to do additional in that area, as well as the fact that in that particular area, we had some subbasins that had multiple outfalls, so we wanted to get away from doing 25% in one corner and then missing an outfall or something. So we really focused a lot more, almost do 100% in that one every year. Some of our desired goals, we wanted to get a good clean data set. We wanted to use this opportunity. We got guys out there day in and day out, popping lids, driving down the streets. We wanted to give them the ability to update our GIS system. Our GIS system was really collected back in 2003, 2006, and so with that, there's obviously changes that have happened since then, and we wanted to give them a way where they can at least tag it. And then also, too, finding trends. We wanted to use this data to find areas where we need to clean more or less, so we're not wasting our time cleaning the same catch bases over and over and over again when they're not really dirty. And then also to be able to identify source control issues and be able to dispatch those more efficiently. So with our cleaning goals, this isn't any kind of permit requirement, but at the same time, our maintenance crews wanted to get on a 3-year cycle of cleaning catch basins. They wanted to clean the entire system within 3 years. So we had an additional goal that we set up above and beyond, where we wanted to clean at least 33% of all the catch basins. And essentially that comes out to about 150 a week and about 7,800 catch basins a year. And right now we're well on track for that. We're almost up to 40% for this year, and we're not even to the end of the year. So we're doing really good. We're way ahead of trends. And I'll kind of talk later why I believe that's the case, and why some of our goals that we set were based on previous data, and now with everything live, we're getting faster information, or getting quality data faster. So some of our data goals, we wanted, like I said before, we wanted to have some KPIs. We wanted to set to really get a realistic goal. A lot of times we're sitting in meetings, and managers and division managers, higher up groups, they're saying, oh, we can clean everything, with no problem, we'll do everything, just tell us what you want us to do, we got it. And it just wasn't really realistic. There was no numbers behind it, so you really couldn't make any kind of realistic goals. So by setting up KPIs, we can now say, if we do this, this is our end result. So that worked out really good. Like I said before, easy compliance with our NPDES requirements. And we wanted it available to everyone too, because it does no good to have one person be the gatekeeper on some kind of data. And then, like I said, with some of these other presentations, that person leaves and all of a sudden you are totally screwed. So this right here just kind of shows some screenshots of some of the KPIs that we have. So we're able to break down all of our subbasins by a number and count. And these are HTML web pages that we put together. And they kind of allow you to see how many catch basins do we have in each subbasin, where are we at this up to date, when was it last cleaned, and we have some time frames in there for cleaning and assessment that we set up. And we're going to be able to adjust those. We can adjust those, and so as time goes by, we're going to adjust those to kind of match up better with our procedures and time frames. We're also able to do it by percentage, so you can see down here at the bottom, you see our percentages here. We're trying to hit our 33% per subbasin. So this gives a crew, they can kind of self-manage. They don't need me to tell them where to go. They just look at the screen and say, okay, I need to go here. This is where my next cleaning thing is. So, and then we also, getting back to KPIs, we're able to break down each week and set some goals for the crew of, for instance, 150 goals. So they're trying to shoot for 150. They actually updated this. They've hit the KPI consistently. I just caught them at a bad time. But essentially, they're able to now and management's able to keep track of where they're at. And they use this tool too to kind of gauge themselves to see if they're getting behind or if we need to put out for overtime or something else. So we're kind of up to date with how things are going. So this right here is a screenshot of our GIS system. We're currently using an offshoot of an Autodesk product. It's our GovMe mapping system. If you haven't seen it before, this is what it looks like. It's similar to others. We're actually doing some piloting right now with some other systems, but for now we needed to this is what we have, and we needed to get it up and running soon, within like a couple of months. So we really just attacked this thing. If you see over on the left-hand side here, you'll see some color representations here with some time frames. It's kind of hard to read with this level of detail, but essentially what we have here is each color represents a time. And this stuff is automatically updated up to date as the user uses it. So if, for instance, tomorrow that catch basin were to be the one that's green there, were to go outside of a particular time frame that we've set, it'll actually change colors. So the guy driving down the street can tell right away when was the last time this was inspected, and if it's in compliance or not. And it gives the ability for the truck. We have multiple trucks driving around sometimes. We ran into cases where the same catch basin got cleaned like 3 or 4 times because the driver would be going around the block and then the next guy would come around and clean the same one again. So this really allows for the operators to do a lot more efficient work. So the way they get to it from here is essentially if they're at this location, they want to do a catch basin inspection on one of these catch basins, they'll just double click on it and it'll take them right to this form here. And essentially what it allows them to do is just put in some basic information, and we really wanted to tailor these forms so they're quick and precise. The first thing that happened when I talked about this was I said, give me all the inspection forms we've ever used and then give me everything you want. And I had about 5 to 10 pages of stuff they wanted the guys to collect, and it just wasn't realistic. And so I took down 5 to 10 pages and got it to this form, which is pretty impressive. We're still making modifications. This is just some basic stuff here. Essentially, it gives a portal here for the guys to input some information, and it actually generates, if work is generated for other groups, it actually puts it in a box for them so they get to see it. So the first thing here that they're going to want to do is get the sediment depth. We had a really good data set back in 2003 of a lot of our catch basins and what the sump depth was. So it gave us a good start point, a good platform to work from. Some other people, it is a lot of work to actually capture this data. And it was kind of funny is that I didn't even know we had the data, and then we actually started to design this, and I happened to be just walking down the hall talking to somebody, and it's kind of ironic and funny that I'm talking to them about this program. I said, yeah, it's going to be really great. And they're like, oh, we've already collected all that data. And so literally we had already done years worth of work, and nobody knew about it. It just was floating out there in a file. So we captured the file and brought it in. So we got some really good data to start with. And it gave us a good platform to start from. It's pretty easy for a guy to figure out the sump depth and to figure out the sediment depth. We use rods and kind of poke down through the dirt and just kind of get a good gauge. They have some markings on a rod that they jam in. We went away from doing invert elevations with this. We can later on generate those, but we just wanted to make it quick and simple for the guys out there working in the field. We don't want to necessarily get them on Trimble units quite yet and actually collecting GPS information and putting it back in. So it just seemed easier for us at this point to just collect this, and we can convert it later, like I said. So with this too, you'll notice on the form here, there's a request button here. So if I happen to be an office staff person and I want someone to do an inspection on this particular basin, I can just go up there and click that button. And what it'll do is it'll generate a list from another web page that they can go to where it just kind of says, here's all the ones that I want done. You notice car parked in the basins a lot. So what we use this for too is that we have a guy that's just pretty much doing this 24/7. He just drives up down the road. We didn't want to have him wasting time if he couldn't get to a basin because if a car's parked on it. So we just have him put in a request and we have another crew follow up. And really the main goal of this is just to be efficient and just keep moving and not waste your time with the little intricacies of things and allow other crews to do some cleanup work. So some of the other things that's generated from this would be maintenance. The form can be used both for the crew cleaning or for a random crew that may be out there doing an inspection. So we've trained all our staff on this program so that our inspectors and source control investigators and some of the other crew people that are just out in the field have the ability to go in here and enter information. So essentially they would come back to this form here that we have, the form you're seeing here. They would just be able to check, then they'd say, was cleaning performed? They would hit no. In fact, only the cleaning crew has the ability to check. It automatically selects it if you're non-field staff. So we tried to make that so that if there was an opportunity to auto-answer a question or in a form, we don't want to waste the time. We want it to be fast and quick because we find that if the slower the form, the less likely people are going to use it. So one of the other things that we came across that was kind of an afterthought and a great benefit to us was source control issues. So we now have the ability to where during filling out an inspection form, you can say, oh, I've identified oil or something in a catch basin or excessive construction debris or something like that. And it gives the ability to kind of lock that catch basin. Because I don't want the next crew to come by and clean an oil area up. I want it to get investigated before it gets cleaned. And so this gives it a way to kind of tag it and prevent others from cleaning. In fact, it won't let you select cleaned if it already is tagged for source control. And if you were to go to that inspection, the screen's like neon purple and just blasts at you to kind of say like, stop, you need to, there's a reason why you're not supposed to be cleaning this thing. And we even used it for some investigation, I can show you this now because you don't know where that number is, but essentially we're trying to track down a guy that's illegally dumping grease. So we were able to kind of lock this one out. They actually we're doing some secret spy work there. So essentially some of the lessons that we learned from this had to do with focusing on the inputs and outputs. A lot of times people will, like I said before, hey, I want to collect 4 or 5 pages worth of information, and that's just not realistic. You really want to focus on what are your needs. So what can I possibly put in and what do I want to get out? And really focusing a lot on that, because if you get into the weeds of things, your forms are going to get so ridiculous that no one will fill them out. The other thing was workflow. We really learned that taking it all the way through the process. So if you generate work, you don't want the work to be generated into a box where no one's looking at it. It doesn't do you any good. So we wanted to really take every process all the way to the end. So if it's complete, it disappears off and nobody sees it anymore. So, and that gets into kind of the organization of our groups and really making sure that all the people that you don't want to generate work for a group they don't know about and then say, hey, by the way, we've generated this work for you, so you need to start doing it. We wanted to get away from that and really just bring all the groups in that were involved. One of our other big lessons learned was our field crews. During our pilot phase, as we were developing these forms and coming together, we found that the field crews were very, very good at being complacent. And they would actually make it their life's effort to make the form work, even when it was ridiculously broken. And they would do everything in their power to submit the form and then not tell me. So I really was stressing to them that we need to keep that line of communication open and really work these things through. Because a lot of times you'll find that there'll be a disconnect between management and engineering and the field crew. They're just trying to meet their numbers and kick things out, and you'll find that they'll actually be very, very good at making your forms work when they probably shouldn't. So some of the other things, integration, as we were developing these programs, one of the things I mentioned before was the GIS updates. So we discovered that our guys are finding catch basins that didn't exist or were missing and that kind of thing. So we incorporated a way for them to just kind of essentially put it out there that there's something here. Right now we don't have it geospatially located. We're really pushing towards a more of a, like I said before, we're doing a pilot on the Esri product to see if we can potentially utilize something like that, or maybe even Google or some other product that we can get some better geospatial information. Right now they're using address and parcel information to track updates, which isn't the most efficient, but at least it gets the guy out there and gets things fixed, and it allows it to queue up versus emails, which is one of the things we want to get away with or get away from. So the future of our program here. So right now we really started this thing off with catch basins. It's been hugely successful. We're really looking at other assets, things like manholes, getting into even facilities, that kind of thing. Whether we use this framework or some other framework, our goal is really the same, which is to make quick and concise forms. So the takeaway from this presentation shouldn't be that you guys should go out and build web forms. The takeaway should be that you really should focus on what your form is trying to collect, because a lot of times even these out-of-the-box products have like 55 drop-downs, and the reality is I ask the question in meetings quite often, why? And that was like the number one answer I get is because, and then I say, well, that doesn't, I'm not for. So we got to come up with reasons to actually collect this data that we're going to use. And you know, once I say it enough, then we start to get these forms down to where they're reasonable for the field guys. So some of the other things we like to do is incorporate pictures and some other things so that we can capture some other stuff. And we also want to do down the road gather lid information, some other things, so that we can better dispatch our field crews for repairs. And then I touched on the Esri products that we're actually piloting it. And not necessarily we're going to go that direction, but just having a little bit more control over our GIS system. So, and that'll give us the ability to do tablets and apps in the field on phones and things like that. So, and really that's where we want to go. We want to get away from having to have laptops